All right, so you know that feeling, right? When you're going after something big, like a big personal goal, or maybe you're trying to make a move in your career, and you just get this feeling like there's got to be a smarter way to go about it.
Yeah.
Well, you guys sent us this book, Your Next Five Moves, Master the Art of Business Strategy by Patrick Bet-David. Dense book, packed with stuff.
Yeah.
So today, our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to basically distill that wisdom right.
Mm.
How to think strategically, not get lost in all the details, like how a chess grandmaster plans their moves way ahead, or a successful entrepreneur just sees the whole board, you know?
Yeah, exactly. The whole idea of thinking 5 moves ahead, it's right there in the title, right?
Right.
But it's not just about some vague vision of the future.
Right.
It's about finding this balance, this real sweet spot between having that long-term vision, knowing where you want to be, but then also taking these decisive actions
In the now.
right now. You have to be able to anticipate those ripple effects. The things you do today, they're going to have consequences down the line.
I like that. And one of the things that really struck me reading the intro of the book is that this isn't just for, CEOs and bigwigs.
Right.
This thinking, this five moves ahead stuff, it's for anyone. You could be starting out, making a career switch, trying to grow your own thing.
Exactly. And it's great that he emphasizes that right up front
Yeah,
because it's true. These principles, this strategic thinking, it can give you a real leg up no matter where you are in your journey.
totally. And it's especially compelling coming from Patrick Bet-David. He's not just talking theory here. He's built his success using these principles.
Yeah, that real world experience, that's what makes this so valuable. It's less like some abstract idea and more like a toolkit, a guide you can actually use.
Totally. So let's get into it. The book starts, and maybe this seems obvious, but it's super important. Know thyself. Before you even think about your first move, it's all about you, understanding who you are, who you want to be.
Yeah, it's almost like a philosophical starting point, but it's got these very real world consequences.
Right, right.
He asks this really direct question in the book. Who do you want to be? And that's where effective strategy begins and ends, with really knowing yourself. Yeah. If you don't have that, if you haven't figured that out, any path could seem okay.
But it might not be the right path for you.
Exactly.
And he gives this tool and exercise.
Yeah, the personal identity audit.
Yeah.
It's this set of questions really designed to make you dig deep and figure out what truly motivates you.
I like that.
Like, how do you think the world sees you?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. Or what conditions bring out the best in you? Asking yourself these tough questions, that's what helps you uncover those core values, those drivers, those things that truly make you tick, what excites you, what you're not willing to compromise on.
That's so important because once you've got that foundation, then you can start building your strategy on top of that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now here's something that really jumped out at me. It's the idea of using and I love this phrase, your haters and doubters as fuel.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, right?
Totally. He gives examples like Elon Musk. I mean, his own father wasn't exactly supportive. And Barbara Corcoran, she talks about how her tough upbringing, all the challenges, actually gave her an advantage. And Patrick himself, he got passed over for a promotion and it lit a fire under him. So, how do we take those negative experiences and use them to our advantage?
It's like this. Don't just dismiss the negativity. Use it. It can be a powerful indicator. It shows you what you really want.
I love that.
Like that pain of being doubted, that frustration when someone says you can't do something,
Uh-huh.
that can be the most potent fuel. Barbara Corcoran's story is a great example.
Mhm.
She took that feeling, that need to prove people wrong, and it became this relentless drive, this engine.
And Patrick's own stories really hit home, like when his high school guidance counselor, Dottie, kind of dismissed him even after he had found success.
Mm-hmm.
Or when his father got terrible care at the hospital, that was a turning point for him. He channeled all those past hurts, all those moments where he felt slighted, and he turned it into this burning desire to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah. It wasn't about dwelling on the negative. It was about using it. Like a constant reminder of what he was fighting for, what he wanted to avoid in the future. That emotional drive, it can be incredibly powerful.
For sure. Now, there's this other concept he introduces that I found really intriguing, future truth.
Oh, yeah.
And it's basically like living in the present, but acting as if your future is already a reality. He uses the example of Thomas J. Watson, who led IBM.
Yeah, Watson had this crystal clear vision for IBM right from the start. And then you have JFK with his audacious goal of putting a man on the moon. It seemed impossible, but he made it happen.
Right. So it's about aligning your actions today with that future you want to create.
It's about the power of belief, of conviction. When you have this unwavering image in your mind of where you want to be and your actions reflect that, it's contagious. People see it, they feel it, they start to believe too. It's like you're already living that future you envision.
I love that. Now, another idea I found super helpful is this idea of a personal assembly of
Oh
mentors.
yeah, that's a good one.
It's like creating this mental or even visual collection of all your heroes. Patrick describes this painting he has in his office.
Yeah, with people like Einstein, JFK, even Tupac.
Right. It's like having this personal board of advisors, all these amazing minds you can turn to for guidance.
And it's more than just admiration. It's about actively using their perspectives. Imagining how would Einstein approach this problem? What principles would JFK use in this situation? It's like tapping into this vast well of wisdom and drawing inspiration from those who have already achieved greatness. He even has an empty chair in that painting, which I thought was a brilliant touch.
Symbolic, right.
Yeah, like there's always room for more, always open to new influences. It makes you think, who would be in your personal mentoring vault?
That's such a good question to ask yourself. And to wrap up this first move, this whole idea of knowing yourself, the book really stresses the importance of self-study, not just studying other people.
Yeah, he quotes Aristotle, Ralph Ellison, Lao Tzu.
Mm-hmm.
They all talk about the importance of looking inward, of knowing yourself. Because understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, your motivations, that's the foundation for self-acceptance.
Mm,
And once you truly accept yourself, even those perceived shortcomings can become advantages.
totally. So let's move on to move two, which is all about where to play.
The game selection.
Yes, it's about strategically picking the right arena for your ambitions, like choosing your battles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Winning isn't just about how skilled you are. It's also about understanding where your abilities are best suited.
Mm,
Like in poker, right? You pick your games carefully.
right, right.
And that's why that deep understanding of yourself from move one is so crucial. It helps you identify a market, a game,
Yeah.
where you have a real advantage.
So he brings up this concept of entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
and he uses this relatable example, this LinkedIn message from an exec at IBM. This guy's got entrepreneurial ambitions, but he's also got a family, responsibilities.
Right. So maybe striking out on his own isn't the best option right now. And that's where entrepreneurship comes in. It's about launching new ventures, but within an existing company. And the book breaks down the 5 key traits of successful entrepreneurs.
Can't meet with him.
Okay, so they think like entrepreneurs, obviously, but they also work like they have that hustle, that urgency. They're constantly innovating, finding new solutions, new approaches, and they protect the brand just like an entrepreneur would.
Interesting. So it's really about the mindset more than the job title.
Exactly. It's about operating with that entrepreneurial spirit, regardless of your position.
And he contrasts his own experiences at 2 different insurance companies, which I thought was really insightful. It shows how the company culture can either nurture that entrepreneurial spirit or completely kill it.
Well, for sure. If you're in a place that shoots down new ideas, punishes you for taking initiative, that's a recipe for disaster.
Stagnation.
Yeah, and people who have that drive, that fire, they're going to leave. On the other hand, if a company empowers its people, rewards them for thinking outside the box, that unlocks so much potential.
Right, right.
That's why he ended up leaving that second company that just wasn't the right fit for his entrepreneurial spirit. You have to align yourself with a company that shares your values, that supports your way of working.
Totally. And then he talks about figuring out your competitive advantages by understanding what your competitors lack.
Mm-hmm.
He uses his experience in the insurance industry back in 2007 as an example.
Right. He saw that the average insurance agent was getting older,
Yeah.
and meanwhile, millennials were coming up, smartphones were
The
everywhere.
world was changing.
Yeah, and the old ways of doing things, they weren't cutting it anymore. He saw those limitations, he saw the opportunities in those gaps.
Like how the older agents weren't really using social media, or how cold calling was becoming less effective because of the do not call registry.
Exactly. But he also saw that people still wanted that personal touch, especially when it came to life insurance. It's not something you just buy online. He even points out how expensive the Google keyword insurance was at the time. Like 55 bucks a click?
Wow.
Yeah. So even with all the technology, that human connection, that face-to-face interaction, it still had huge value. So what are those skills, those experiences that you have that give you an edge? Where are the gaps that you can fill? That's what you got to figure out.
So it's all about finding that specific niche, that sweet spot where your talents really shine. Don't try to be everything to everyone.
Right. Don't play a game where you're already at a disadvantage. Focus on the areas where you have a clear edge.
Makes sense. Now, he also talks about processing, which is basically making effective decisions.
Yeah, and the key to being a good processor is taking responsibility, full ownership.
Using I instead of they.
Exactly. Great decision makers, they own their outcomes, good or bad. They analyze their mistakes, they figure out what they could have done differently. They're always learning and growing.
Right. It's about that constant improvement.
Yeah. The bad processors, they point fingers, they make
Hmm.
excuses, they don't grow. He uses this example of Joe Rogan taking responsibility for a mistake with his coffee order.
Really?
Yeah, just a small thing, but it illustrates the point perfectly. Own your mistakes, learn from them, move on.
I like that. So, besides taking responsibility, he also stresses the importance of, and this is a little dark, considering the worst case scenario.
Yeah. He brings up Dale Carnegie's wisdom here.
Yeah.
It's about being realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just focus on the best case numbers, the pie in the sky projections.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if things go wrong? Can you handle it? You have to think about
So
that.
it's about being prepared for the downsides, the potential risks.
Exactly. Because if you're not, those optimistic projections, they can lead you down the wrong path.
Totally. Now, he also gives this methodology, this framework for making decisions called Solve for X.
Yeah, it's about really digging down to the root cause of problems.
Getting to the heart of the issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He gives an example of when his company was being sued by Egon. Big financial hit. But he decided to settle
Why?
because it protected his long-term goals. He was playing the long game. He also introduces this tool, investment time return, or ITR.
ITR.
Yeah, and it's not just about calculating your return on investment in the traditional sense. It's about strategically prioritizing those investments that are going to create a lasting advantage, even if the immediate return isn't the biggest.
So it's a bigger picture view of ROI. It's about the long-term impact.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's tackle move 3, which is all about master building the right team.
Yes.
And he starts by debunking what he calls the myth of the solopreneur.
Right. You can have the best strategy in the world, but without the right team to execute it, it's going to fail.
It's a team sport.
It is. And he makes this really interesting point about, especially in the early stages, people aren't just joining a company, they're joining you.
As the lead.
Yeah. And that brings us to the idea of the benefits program.
Yeah.
And it's not just about salary and perks, especially when you're starting out.
Right. It's more than that.
It's about the value you bring as a leader. The question is, if people get closer to you, will they win?
I like that.
And it's about building a track record, a resume of success stories. People whose careers, whose lives have been positively impacted by being around you. That's the real benefit.
And you have to constantly be aware of that.
Oh, yeah. Top talent, they're always evaluating.
Making sure they're getting that value.
Exactly. They're asking, am I growing here? Is this the right environment for me? Is this leader invested in my success? You have to be re-recruiting them all the time.
Interesting. And he lists out these key questions that people will ask, like, what makes your company stand out? What's different about your leadership? Do you have a code of honor?
Yeah, people want to know what they're signing up for.
Yeah.
They want to be a part of something meaningful with a leader they can respect, a company with strong values.
So being able to answer those questions authentically, that's crucial.
Totally. Now, he also stresses the importance of having a conciliere.
Okay, I like that, like a trusted advisor.
Exactly. Even the most successful entrepreneurs, they don't do it alone.
Hmm.
They need that inner circle, those people who can offer different perspectives, who have your back.
Support.
And he uses this crazy example, the story of Donnie Brasco, who infiltrated the mafia.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a reminder that you got to be careful, do your due diligence, even with people you think you can trust. Because greed, it can make people vulnerable.
That's a good point. So trust but verify.
Exactly.
Now, another big part of building the right team is equity.
Mm-hmm.
He presents it as this powerful tool to create that ownership mentality, to incentivize people to work hard, and to keep them around for the long haul.
Makes sense.
He talks about Microsoft and how they created all these millionaires and billionaires through equity. And he says that giving out equity, it's more art than science.
Yeah, you have to be strategic about it. It's about aligning the interests of your team with the success of the company. It's about turning employees into owners.
So they think like owners, act like owners.
Exactly. And it's one of the best ways to retain your top talent.
And along with equity, he emphasizes clear communication.
Oh, that's huge.
Set those expectations early and often. And he talks about frequent re-recruiting.
Right. It's an ongoing
You
process.
can't just assume people will stick around. You got to keep reminding them why they joined in the first place.
Exactly. Reinforce that value proposition. Make sure they know they're appreciated, that they're growing, that they're a part of something special.
Now, let's talk about the tougher side of team building, firing.
Oh, yeah. Nobody likes that part.
No, but he has this whole section on fire gently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about taking responsibility, at least in part, for a bad hire.
Right. And approaching that termination with empathy, with respect.
It's not about making them feel worse.
No, it's about being professional.
Yeah.
And in the age of social media, you got to be mindful of your reputation, both
Yeah.
yours and theirs.
Right. It's a small world.
It is. Don't drag it out. Don't be vindictive. Focus on their strengths. Help them see a path forward.
Okay, so it's more of a redirect than a complete shutdown.
Exactly. And he has this great principle: hire slowly, fire quickly.
Interesting.
I mean, you got to be really thorough in your hiring process, but once you realize it's not a fit, you got to act decisively.
And he shares the story about having to fire a top performer.
Yeah, the guy was unethical,
Yeah.
potentially even breaking the law.
Wow.
And it was a tough call, but he had to let him go because your principles, your values, they can't be compromised.
Not even for short-term gains.
Exactly.
So what are some other things he talks about when it comes to building the right team?
Well, he introduces this idea of positive friction.
Okay, what's that?
It's about encouraging open and honest feedback within the team, being willing to call people out, even if they're more senior, if they're violating those established values.
Okay, so like constructive criticism, but with teeth.
Yeah, exactly. It's about holding everyone accountable, maintaining those high standards. He also talks about the power of back talk.
Back talk.
Yeah, and it's not what you think. It's about praising people behind their backs.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like this positive reinforcement that spreads through the team. It creates this culture of appreciation.
That's pretty clever.
It is. And he talks about the importance of having written principles, almost like a prenuptial agreement for business.
Whoa, a business prenup.
Yeah. It's about anticipating those potential conflicts, especially when it comes to things like equity, salaries, codes of conduct.
Okay, so setting the ground rules up front.
Exactly. Plan for the what-ifs. He even uses this funny example of buying a book about pre-engagement questions with his wife. It's about being proactive.
That's great. So what else? What other insights does he offer when it comes to building the right team?
Well, he talks about tough love,
Hmm.
about pushing people to reach their full potential, even if it's uncomfortable in the moment.
Yeah, sometimes you need that.
You do. And he emphasizes the importance of asking deep questions.
Not just surface level stuff.
No, like really getting to know someone, their motivations, their character. And then there's this idea of trust is a pendulum.
Interesting.
It means trust isn't static. It goes back and forth based on reliability, on track record. He talks about the 4 levels of trust.
Get me.
Okay, so you have suspect, which is basically someone you just met, no history. Then there's endorsed, someone who comes recommended by someone you trust. Then trusted, someone who's consistently delivered over time. And finally, there's running mate.
Running mate, that's a high bar.
It is. That's someone you'd bet your career on, someone who's proven their loyalty, their judgment.
Wow.
So think about where the people in your life fall on that spectrum.
That's a good exercise. So we've covered a lot here, from knowing yourself to picking the right arena to building the right team. Anything else stand out to you from move 3?
Yeah, he talks about understanding your team's love languages.
Okay, I've heard of that for relationships, but for business.
Yeah, it's about knowing how to show appreciation, how to build that trust, which ultimately leads to better results.
It's about speaking their language.
Exactly. He outlines 9 love languages of entrepreneurs. It's things like one-on-one time, public praise, even clear direction.
So figure out what makes your team tick.
Yeah, and then tailor your approach. And he also talks about the difference between sheep and lions.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sheep are those easily replaceable employees.
Got it.
Lions, those are your high performers, the ones who drive their own initiatives, who are running their own little empires within the company.
So you got to know how to manage those lions.
Exactly. Create an environment where they can thrive. He also talks about the importance of understanding investor perspectives when raising capital.
Right, different game, different players.
And he touches on the idea of positive pressure, how pushing your team, setting high expectations, can lead to growth and resilience. He uses examples like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady.
Yeah, those guys definitely know a thing or two about winning.
They do. So yeah, a lot packed into move 3. Building the right team is crucial.
It is. Wow, that was a whirlwind.
We covered so much ground.
It's amazing how much is packed into just the first three moves of this book, but I think it's clear this whole strategic thinking thing, it's not about having all the answers right now.
It's about being on a journey.
Exactly. It's about constantly learning, adapting, growing, like Patrick's own story shows.
Absolutely. You got to develop that strategic mindset, that ability to analyze challenges, see opportunities, and make smart decisions.
So I'll throw it back to our listeners. Remember that question from the beginning, who do you want to be?
Think about it.
After going through these first three moves, what are your motivations, your strengths, your weaknesses? Who do you need on your team to achieve your goals?
And here's another question for you. Now that we've covered the groundwork, the foundation of strategic thinking, what's one thing, one concrete action you can take today to better understand yourself, to evaluate your current situation, your competition, or to strengthen those relationships with your team, your collaborators?
Lots to think about there. And remember, this is just the first three moves. There's two more sections in the book, Mastering Strategy to Scale and Master Power Plays. So there's a whole other level of strategic thinking to explore.
A whole other level.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into thinking 5 moves ahead.